We have arrived at Resident Evil Outbreak. Developed by Capcom Studio 1, it released in Japan on the 11th of December 2003 before coming to America 3 months later in March 2004. And the PAL regions? Well, they were kept waiting until September of that same year. Upon its release, it was met with middling praise, netting Metacritic of 71 and sales of 1.45 million, which is higher than the other spin-offs I've covered so far, but still a far cry from the mainline series. Before I dive into this review, I'm going to share my history with this game. Following the US launch, I had a long, painful wait for its eventual UK release, but fortunately, I had an opportunity to play the game before it launched at a trade show down in London. I was 14 at the time. My dad took me and a couple of mates, and I got to play Outbreak in all its glory. 4 setups across the venue all playing together online blew my mind, and I only had a few months to go until it would be in my hands. And then, the worst happened. The PAL regions were cancelled for online play.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
That small, sweet taste of what the rest of the world had been enjoying for months, slipping through my grasp, was more than a boy could take. So out of sheer fury, I ended up cancelling my pre-order and played it through on my mate's chipped PS2, not wanting to give Capcom a single penny. Needless to say, it's been a long time since then, and I've never gone back to Outbreak. So on the build up to this review, I was beyond excited to finally give it a fair shot. When it came to playing, I was presented with 2 options, online or offline. Now I can hear you saying, but Davey, if the game came out in 2003, how the hell are you going to play it online now? Surely the servers are shut. Well, yeah, they are. But that doesn't stop anything. A group of fans got together and opened a server. Sure, you have to emulate it, but the online works decent enough to make it playable with your friends. Now unfortunately, my laptop is a goddamn potato and can't run it. So, it meant I was left with one option: buy the game on PS2 and experience it the same way I did all the way back then. Over the course of this review, I'm going to detail what works, what doesn't, and ultimately answer the question, does it hold up in the 2020s? Now just before I get into that, if you're enjoying my content, then put a like on the video and subscribe. It all helps me find a larger audience and grow the channel. But that's enough of that. As usual, this review is split into plot, gameplay and presentation. Now let's dive in. Outbreak tells its story differently from any game I've covered up to this point. Splitting into 5 chapters, the story is told out of sequence. Now due to the game being online, the splitting of the story makes perfect sense. You can then dive into specific scenarios and play only the ones you want to revisit. You don't need to do the entire game in one sitting to stay with your buddies. The thing is, I just don't understand why it's given to us in a jumbled way. The first scenario, titled Outbreak, chronicles the beginning of the outbreak in Raccoon City, putting it just before the events of Resident Evil 3 in terms of chronology, and to be honest, it's what every fan wanted to see. We got small glimpses of Raccoon City's fall in Resident Evil 2 and 3, but with an entire city to explore, there's plenty of stories to tell. It also finally shows us what the police have been up to on that fateful day. Scenario 2, below freezing point, we jump into the Umbrella Labs, presumably a day or so later, and here is typical affair. Greedy Umbrella employee wants to steal bioweapons while everything is in disarray. Things get out of hand, and survivors need to escape. Scenario 3, The Hive, we find ourselves in Raccoon City Hospital, trying to escape the clutches of a leech man. Scenario 4, Hellfire, is set the same day as Outbreak. The group escape into the Apple Inn Hotel, only to find it on fire and besieged by lickers. The final scenario, Decisions, the group arrive at Raccoon City University to find a cure and escape for good. In my headcanon, I'd order them chronologically like this, but really, I'm just pulling this out my arse. Hopefully Outbreak File 2 will give me more answers.
Why?
Originally Outbreak was going to be 18 scenarios at least, but late in development they cut it to 5 and heavily edited them to reach the Japanese release date, and that's probably the reason for this confusing order of events, but who really knows? Putting chronology to the side, the plot on show here is delivered pretty well. Each scenario starts with a big CG cutscene, giving us all the information we need. As the scenario unfolds, more and more cutscenes are given to drive that scenario's plot onwards, while supplementing this with all the files we've come to expect to fill in some of those blanks. Now, to see everything this game has, you can expect to complete the entire game through using each of the 8 characters, and with 28 different endings depending on your choices in decisions, combined with the character you play as, there's every chance I've missed something here that fills in the blanks of where they've come from and where they're going next. So there's not really too much point in me dwelling on chronology any longer. The plot overall does the job. It's standard Resident Evil affair. Nothing stands out to me outside of the opening in Raccoon City. For all the other scenarios, we've seen similar locations and plot devices used in the mainline games. It ends up feeling more like a greatest hits of the series, rather than striking new ground. Let's start this section with a big statement. Outbreak is the natural evolution of classic Resident Evil. Big words. But what do I mean? Well, Outbreak shares the same DNA as the mainline series up to Code Veronica. We have a dynamic camera, limited item capacity, ammunition and heals, and an abundance of puzzles. But what it adds to this is context and character specific actions. Now I'll explain these first before looping back into the changes that have been made to accommodate online play. As you begin, you choose a scenario to tackle and a character to play as. There's 8 different survivors. Each one has their own unique skill to aid themselves or the wider team. Kevin starts with a powerful pistol which frees up a space in his inventory. His unique skill is taking a power stance, where you deal increased damage to enemies using the gun. You can expect zombies to drop in a single shot with this. He can also channel his inner Shawn Michaels. David can create new weapons out of items. Give him a lighter and an aerosol can, and that's now a flamethrower. He can also throw spanners from his utility belt. And no lie, this actually saved my ass on a boss fight. Alyssa is the master of unlocking, helping to uncover more items or move through locked doors with ease. And for the final example, Yoko. She has a backpack, enabling her 8 slots as opposed to the rest of the cast, who only have 4. And this is of course super handy when it comes to storing your key items, weapons, ammunition and heals. Each character has their own strengths and weaknesses. It's not just their skills that separate them, they each have their own health and speed stats, so your playstyle will need to change depending on who you pick. Now I mentioned context sensitive actions, but what do I mean? Well, you hear a zombie banging on the door. What do? In previous games you'd evaluate your position and either avoid or engage, but here you can brace yourself against the door to stop them entering. You can even board up the door or create a barricade to slow the zombies down. And that's not all. Let's say you encounter a door locked with a simple lock, but you don't have Alyssa on the team. You can just boot it down. You can even harness your inner Solid Snake and get inside a locker to hide from enemies. It's truly awesome to have this much control while still using the tank controls that I adore so much. Outbreak was made from the ground up to be an online experience, and so, to accommodate for all the menu navigation that's part and parcel of classic RE, they made one key change. Going into the menus doesn't pause the action. And that means if you need to check the map, heal, change gun, or read a file, you better make sure you're in a safe spot, as enemies will continue to come at you regardless to how invested you are in that file pickup. Now this non-stop action is combined with a new introduction to the series, a viral indicator. Separated from health, this meter continues to tick up, and when it hits 100%, it's game over. For online play, you actually revive as a zombie and can hunt down your old teammates. The meter continues to progress slowly on its own, and increases rapidly when damaged by enemies. Now you can slow it down with antiviral medication or heals, but you can't reverse it. It's an addition to the game to keep you moving. You can't afford to dawdle. For the majority of the game, it's more of an illusion of haste rather than something to actively worry about. But In the later chapters, which have multiple puzzles and objectives, it does become a real worry. There's nothing worse than getting near the end and dying to this. The only saving grace is that you know it's your own fault. Maybe I shouldn't have taken so many hits. I should have been quicker. I should have spotted the solution for that puzzle way earlier. It's a clever system, and one which does its intended job well. Sticking to the positives, the amount of weapons on offer in Outbreak is insane. You've got all the usuals we've come to expect: pistols, shotguns, grenade launchers and magnums, and they are joined with a bucket load of new melee options. No longer is the knife the only pick. Here, you can bash a zombie in with a broom or an iron rod. Hell, you can even chuck a block of concrete. With this assortment of items and only 4 spaces for you to store them, it's essential that item management works well. Unfortunately, it does. Following in RE0's footsteps, there's no item box to be found here. Items can be placed in the environment and collected later, with the map updating on what's been left where. With the limited inventory on offer, you'll be constantly choosing between which items you want to carry, and so, knowing you aren't losing an item forever does eliminate potential frustration. In offline play, it's you and 2 CPUs, which makes a total of 12 slots. Or, if Yoko is there, that's up to 16. Now if you want to give or take an item from one of them, you pull up your menu, select the item, click either request or present, and that's it. It's easy. It's a shame you can't select multiple items in one interaction, which would avoid multiple menu transitions, but that's only a minor critique. Unfortunately, the issues I have with Outbreak put that minor inconvenience to the side, so let's get into them. Outbreak is shockingly bad at communicating to the player which items you need to keep, and which you don't. Normally in the series, upon using a key item, you're presented with text informing you this item is no longer needed, and would you like to discard it. Outbreak, for some ungodly reason, decided to omit this. Now if you had 8 slots each, this wouldn't be a deal breaker, but only having 4 meant I was stuck lugging about a key card for an entire scenario, thinking I'd need it again. I was 3 scenarios in before this realization hit me, meaning that for the majority of the game, I'd given myself a huge handicap. It gets worse too. David can create new weapons out of other items, but which items are his, and which are key items? There's no color coding, no line of descriptive text to inform the player, it's just trial and error. Now on scenario 4, I had to restore power to an emergency ladder. I found a battery pack early on, and thought, this is bound to be a key item. I'll need this when I head to the power room later. Its sole use is to make a stun rod with an iron pipe. A simple key or piece of text would make this a non-issue. And to me, that's just bad design. Nowhere else in the series would you unintentionally restrict yourself down to 2 working slots, all because you're carrying some redundant key item, and an item for a character that you're not even playing as. Now as I stated, I played this game in offline mode, and there's one real issue with that. The AI is dog shit. Just take a look at this.
Just this massive fucking space here, but you're just still clocking on down the road, aren't you? Fucking move! Move! Move!
My normal experience was one partner stayed with me, and the other fucked off and died on their own, carrying nothing but a blue herb and a shit ton of ammo for guns they don't even hold. Oh, and item conservation? Say you give them a shotgun, or God help you, a grenade launcher. They're firing it off the moment an enemy gets close, even when they have a melee option on offer. It didn't take me long to realize I had to hoard all the heavy stuff and leave them with nothing more than a pistol. To help direct the AI, you are given a host of commands to try and guide them, from follow and stay, through to specifically calling an individual character. But for some reason, they decided it would be a good idea for the AI to ignore you.
Come on! No. The fuck you say to me, you little shit!
What does this do? Does this add any realism to the game? Or does it simply make me want to bash in their fucking skull with this old battery I've lugged about for an hour? Now, the AI does have some uses. They can solve puzzles and get key items for you while they're off on their one-man crusades. But to be brutally honest, the vast majority of the time, whoever went AWOL stayed that way. There was no chance I was putting myself in harm's way to save them, when they're nothing but a liability. So if it's not abundantly clear here, the best way to experience this game would be to get together with a group of mates. That way, you can separate into teams to accomplish goals and organize a meeting point. You can double down on your specific character traits and use them to aid the whole team. In playing it solo, your best bet, in my opinion, is to essentially lone wolf it with Kevin or Mark, and use your teammates as nothing more than human shields. Outbreak chose a similar style to Code Veronica than the newer Resident Evil 0 and Remake, which had been released only a year prior. This means the 3D real-time backgrounds are here alongside a dynamic camera. The game, for the most part, looks excellent. The character models and environments all look great, but when you compare it to its GameCube brothers, 0 and Remake, the pre-rendered backgrounds are so impressive. It's baffling why they didn't take the same approach when it came to Outbreak. But whatever the reason, in and out of cutscene, it still looks great. And fortunately, I'm happy to say, it also sounds excellent. The soundtrack on offer across every scenario, location, and menu is superb, creating real moments of apprehension, suspense, and intrigue. And I've included a number across this review to try and show my sheer appreciation for how good this soundtrack is. Now usually at this point I'd say something negative about the voice acting, but here it's actually done really well. The voice actors do a great job with the writing they've been given, selling their character's personality in every syllable. Due to the ad-libbing that's ingrained in the game, you hear the same lines over and over again, but fortunately, it never seemed to grate on me, and I can only chalk that up to the great work delivered by every one of the cast. In terms of enemies and their design, it's pretty much a greatest hits of the wider series. We have all the usuals from RE1 to 3, zombies, dogs, lickers, hunters, spiders, and my favourite enemy in the entire series. The shark is back. It's been a long time since we last saw them, all the way back in Resident Evil 1, but for a brief appearance they return and immediately put a massive smile on my face. After all, how can you be an evil organisation hell-bent on creating the perfect life form and not have an entire army of sharks ready to go at every opportunity? Now there are a few new additions to the series which are mostly used in boss fights, but to be honest, they aren't much different from any enemy we've encountered before. The Regis Licker is just another Licker, and Thanatos is essentially any old tyrant. The designs on all of these are fine, it's just a shame the team didn't try and leave their own stamp on the series by creating something truly unique. Resident Evil Outbreak blew me away. I was so wrong to write this game off at the time of its release. Even playing it offline, which essentially hampers it from its true potential, the game does so many things right. Outbreak loves to give you options, who you play, what you use, and how you do it. It's a true evolution of classic gameplay within Resident Evil, and it somehow keeps hold of what makes the older games work so well, with its limited resources, route planning and puzzles, and brings it into an online environment. Even though the AI on the CPUs is beyond awful, and the game lacks a cohesive plot, I can't help but be impressed with what Capcom achieved here. In my mind, this is the game that deserves a remake more than any other entry in the entire series. Having this kind of online experience on PC and console, available for all of us to play with full voice support and 4K graphics, would be a welcome breath of fresh air from all the experiences we have available to us right now. And let's be real, I'd buy this game again if they just put it up in its current form. Capcom, make it happen. If you have a decent PC or a PS2 and haven't played Outbreak before, I'd encourage you to check it out. You won't be disappointed. And that's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then put a like on the video and let me know what you think about Outbreak in the comments section. I try and respond to everyone, so I'll look forward to hearing from you. Up next on the channel is Outbreak File 2, before I move on to the Umbrella Chronicles. So don't forget to subscribe for more Resident Evil content. Now if you're still craving for a bit more from me, you can also find me on a fortnightly PlayStation podcast called In PS We Trust, where we discuss all the latest news, rumours and big topics from the world of PlayStation. Consider checking it out. I'll put a link in the description. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. See ya.